Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. I'm super geeked about the guest today. I'm super excited about my guest today. This dude had me on his podcast. This is my friend from across the pond, and he had me on his podcast. We've connected through social media. He's an artist. He's a marketer. He does a lot of things that I really respect. So I'm not going to do too much introduction. Aengus, my friend, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Kyle, it is great to be here. I'm excited to go full circle and round out the each other's podcast experiences.
Let's do it. What we call it, the podcast circuit. We're creating a circuit here.
Exactly. Building the circuit.
Well, I've been like following and watching you and like somewhat interacting over the past probably 6-12 months. I think I originally found you on, there's the cat again. You're fine. I think I originally found you and we connected on LinkedIn, or I had some ways about finding all the Vayner employees on LinkedIn from some stuff Gary said back in the day, and I just watched and tried to interact. And then it's turned into this, like somebody I really, really respect and I think is a super awesome person. And you're just you have a lot of great energy. You have a lot of cool skills, and you just have amazing there's no fake about you. Like you're just a very authentic person. So I really respect that about you. So anyways, before I just take over, can you just kind of, I kind of like know who you are and get your vibe. Can you just let the people know, who you are? Give us the brief highlight reel.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words, and right back at you. I think plenty of people hit me up based on the fact that I work at Vayner, but I don't end up on podcasts with many of them. So I think that's a testament to you as a person too. In terms of me, highlight reel, let me go through my life. I was born in 1990, which makes me 30 years old. Was a bit of a late bloomer when I was young, so I sort of struggled a bit when I was a kid in terms of like, I don't know, I was always a bit small and a bit behind the pace, shall we say. But then I did Kung Fu when I was young. I got a black belt in Kung Fu when I was about 18, when I was 17. And that was very formative because that helped build my confidence, because I was like, I'm not scared of any of these people because I've beaten them in a fight now. So that really helped. Then went to university, did zoology, realized zoologists didn't get jobs that were the best paying jobs necessarily. So then I did a master's in marketing, worked for a while, and when I did that master's, it felt like, oh, I found my thing. Like there was people who'd done 4-year business degrees after a week who were asking me questions, and I was like, this is so obvious. I don't understand how you don't get this, but cool. And yeah, then have been working for 5 or 6 years, worked for a company in Ireland. Was a big fan of Gary Vee for a long time, and then applied for a job at Vayner Media, and here I am.
Voila. And that's it, folks. Podcast is over. I'm just kidding. Zoology. Were you always into zoology and animals?
Nope. I liked biology in school, in like high school. Picked a course in marketing. You could do like general science, or you could get these like specific science courses, and they were like harder to get into. And I think based on that, I decided they must be better. So I picked one of the specific ones, which was biochemistry. And failed horribly, and so I spent an extra year in university, which was fucking fun. So don't get me wrong, I'm pleased about it. But I then had done some modules in zoology. Was like, this seems easy. I can. This isn't as complicated as biochemistry, and so I was like, cool, I'll do that.
Look, I like that though. Like, I think we all agree in like in life, especially in this day and age, and when you're young, right? Like tasting and trying new things is, I mean, that's the key to finding what makes you tick. What's your passion? I think it's super cool that you've tried a lot of things, man. Kung Fu, like you probably kicked my butt real fast. I got no formal training. That's cool, man. That's cool to hear, just for my own self, being like, man, you're so interesting. You're such an interesting person, Aengus. I want to talk to you a little bit about, like, obviously we're still in COVID or wherever we're at with this whole pandemic. It's super unfortunate, but look, we are here. We've lived through it. How has lockdown been for you? Because you're in England. right? So we've all had different experiences. What's your experience been like in lockdown?
Mixed bag, definitely. I think early
Mhm.
on, like overall positive, I would say,
Mhm.
as a net
Good.
score. Like looking back, I think I've like started a podcast, started painting. All of this has come really through lockdown.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think I was sort of very conscious at the start of it of like I tend to try view things in as optimistic a way as possible. And early on in
Respect.
lockdown, thank you. I and I know you do too. I sort of was looking early in lockdown at probably honestly the first few days of lockdown. I had the news on the TV constantly when I was working from home, and was like for about 3 days did that, and I felt awful, was so stressed. I was like, oh my god, the world's ending basically.
Yeah.
Since then, I've pretty much not watched the news at all, and I felt phenomenal, like so good. And off the back of that change, I was focusing on like what are the things about this that when it's over and it never happens again, that I'm going to be like, oh, I wish I'd taken more advantage of that.
Mm.
And a big one was like, obviously when there's so much less time spent socializing, out, going, commuting, all the time gained from being spending so much time at home,
Sure.
I wanted to make sure I utilized that. And so from the back of that, I think it's been generally positive. I would say the worst part was winter. We went
Mm.
back in right before Christmas. We went back into a more really extreme lockdown because cases went like super
Mhm.
super up. And from Christmas until like a month ago, when things have started to open up here a bit again,
Mhm.
that period was grim because during the summer when it was locked down, you could still go out and go for drinks in the park and like walk in
Yeah.
the sun. Whereas when it's freezing cold and wet outside, and dark, it was just like it was just grim. It was grim. So I'm glad winter's over.
Are you guys, so it sounds like you guys are opening back up. Is that correct? Or headed that way?
Headed that way, yeah.
Mhm.
Like outdoor groups of six are allowed for like
Mhm.
restaurants and pubs and stuff, but still no
Mhm.
indoor. 21st of June is the date we're all aiming for. I think that's
Good.
when things should be pure normal, hopefully.
Good. That's exciting. I love
Yeah.
that it's so interesting to me the way different people handled the lockdowns and the pandemic differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously that will lead to different outcomes, right? Like you have art all over your wall. I mean, something happened. Like I think you did something throughout all this. Was art like a love that you had or a passion you had, or was this like a new discovery for you?
Um, it was a new discovery as a passion. I think
Mm.
it was something I had dabbled with and done a bit the odd time for the past 10 years or so.
Mhm.
But I never viewed myself as artistic.
Mm.
I did this once every so often and sort of enjoyed it as a thing, but never really thought anything of it.
Mhm.
And then around the time of lockdown, yeah, it's just sort of taken off, I guess.
Did you? But you didn't go into lockdown being like, I'm just gonna do art. You just kind of like what was the where was the
So
where was
I've
the
never.
turning point?
This is an exclusive, okay? And it's gonna get very woo
Yes.
woo.
Yes.
I've told the version of the story I've always told since in the last year, and probably partially. I hope this doesn't matter. It involves some drug taking,
Say what you
so I hope we're
want.
safe to talk about it.
This is
Um,
unfiltered, uncensored. Cheers.
yes. So I had randomly painted whatever a few times over the past 10 years, and
Mhm.
more recently in like 2 years ago maybe had like gotten a few canvases. I think I can't remember what the roughly that sort of timing. I went to Glastonbury, which is a huge music festival in the UK, like the biggest one. Had like did mushrooms for the first time, did mushrooms
Mhm.
for 5 days straight, was like, this is unbelievable. Then came home from Glastonbury, had some mushrooms that someone had given me at Glastonbury, ate some more of those mushrooms, this is like a month or two later, and did a painting. And I
Uh-huh.
think these are all sort of blurry memories, but like during that first painting, I was like, I think the first painting I was doing, it was like while on mushrooms, which is a weird, like, I don't know if you've ever done it, but it feels like,
Yes.
for me, very spiritual thing that makes me feel very connected to we might term that thing that some people call God, other people call other things the universe, whatever it is. And the first painting was about just getting my shit together in my life. So I drank a lot. I've stopped drinking, and I think that sort of painting clarified thinking in my head. I don't know how to describe it. And then fast forward another few weeks, I think I watched a documentary about Jean-Michel Basquiat, who's like the guy who sold the most expensive painting ever. It was after he died, but like he sold lots of paintings while he was alive. And it sort of, I had the realization of like, oh, people pay loads of money for art. And basically I was like, I'm going to go try get a piece of that pie. So I basically, to put it succinctly, maybe some sort of spiritual power guided me towards this path. I don't know.
Sure. That's a cool story, man. I'm glad that you shared that exclusively on Inside the Mirror podcast.
I'm glad, yeah, because I'm actually on my plan for my next podcast is to do the story of my first year in art, and I'm gonna reveal that version of the story, but you've heard it here first, so good preview.
This is amazing. We're getting all the dirt and the details right now. That's a cool story, man. Like it's so cool to hear like origin stories of people's passions, right? Of like, because I mean it's there's no fluidity to it, right? Like me and you and Jerry and Jim, like whoever, right? Everybody's got a different story. So it's always cool to me. And it's always cool when there's like something you could put your finger on and be like, that was it, right? Like this time, these days, I was on mushrooms, like all this experience, and then boom, clarity, right? And now you're passionate and doing it. Like that's super exciting. I think there's something to that being willing to kind of let loose, right? Or maybe let loose is a weird way, but just let go and kind of like, right? I don't know if seek your experiences, but be open to new things and kind of, what am I trying to say? Open yourself up to be able to let these things kind of poke and prod you and see which one. Oh, that's the one I like. This is the one I like, right? Like, that's super cool, man. That's a cool story.
Before that I try a lot of things. Like that's so true. And like when I was a kid, especially, I got to Kung Fu by trying about 50 other sports before it. I think I was into football before it, soccer as well. But and I think this art that's a similar thing. It's like, and it's like you said, it's like being willing to try lots of different things, but then also I guess being aware enough, like there was something about it when I did it and I sort of enjoyed it, and then it pulled me back in another time later. You know what I mean? It was like some part of me was listening to that, and then like when I sort of had that realization, I really leaned in, I guess. But I think it's being willing to try stuff, and then being aware of which things are resonating with you and which things you're actually finding enjoyment in versus you think you should be doing, but you're actually they're bringing you stress. You know, those sort of things.
I mean, it sounds like all of that could almost be wrapped up in like, you know, the phrase self-awareness, right?
Yeah, very much.
What do you think about that? Like, because there's so many people I talk to and friends and family and people that are like, how do I become more you talk about self-awareness, how do you become more self-aware? And sometimes I'm like, sometimes I have some good tidbits and other times I draw a blank because I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like it's just something I just like, it was in me and it kind of just keeps growing. I don't always know how to tangibly tell people this is what you do to become self-aware. Like, have you always had that in you?
Yeah, I've probably never consciously thought about this before. So, but agreed. Yeah, it's a weird one. I think it's like that gut feeling, like intuition, you know, it is. I think it's not, and it's very easy to say be self-aware or self-awareness, and it's like sounds like a clear-cut thing. It's either yes or no, but it's massively on a spectrum, on a scale, you know.
Yep.
And I think it is one of those things. It's like you just have to try figure it out. Like it's very subtle, like things about how you feel, or like you notice that actually thinking back on that, I wasn't enjoying it as much as maybe I thought I would be. Whatever it is, it's like. And I think it's like a muscle almost. So it starts off as a very faint noise, and the more that you can listen, figure out maybe is that the faint noise, and sort of lean in a bit more and try something else. And you know what I mean? Over time you develop that intuition and that understanding of yourself more. I think it's like very much a process.
That's well said. I like the muscle analogy. I think that's a great one for like, I think that's a great analogy for a lot of things, right? Like
for sure, man. Seriously.
I mean, we could go for days probably, but like, you know what I mean? Like whether it's hard work and tearing muscles and rebuilding and like, there's so many uses for that analogy. But like you said, it's being willing to, I guess, yeah, maybe being willing to maybe pursue, like you said, it's so hard to say that.
I know, yeah.
Self-awareness is, man, I wish I just had like a simple answer of like, yeah, if you just, go and wake up and do 1, 2, 3, and then you'll be self-aware and your life will be great and you'll just know what you love.
Actually, just sprung to me. I think maybe the answer is like, just try to feel good as often as you can, almost. Like, obviously there's room and space where the negative feelings come in, but as a broad strokes, like whenever you find yourself being like, oh, I don't necessarily feel good right now, I feel stressed or I feel unhappy, whatever it is, figure out what's causing that and then try to do less of that. And then whenever you feel yourself feeling positive, and it's not necessarily that conscious, but it's like that's the thing to be aware of and it's like you'll just notice one little thing here and there, and it's how you adjust to those small things, I guess, over time, probably.
Bro, we are so on the same page right now.
I know.
I literally had a conversation with my mom yesterday and was just talking about, I call it like capturing your thoughts, being able to recognize like, man, I've been just really negative the past few days or hours or minutes. And then taking the next step to feed yourself positive thoughts, which is literally almost exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And meditating, I'm going to guess that you meditate, because that's the thing. That's the thing that turns up the volume on that small. That's what gives you the space. And it's not going to be always, we're not like enlightened or whatever, but it's like that maybe it means like 5% of the negative thoughts you have, you'll now be like, oh, wait, why did I just think that? Or like 1% even. And you can gradually start to chip away at it. But that's a huge part of it, I think, is like that gives you that gives you the awareness of the voice in your head, or what the different thoughts you're having and which ones you pay attention to or whatever.
I think you're right, bro. I think you're right. Well, it's just that idea of creating space, right? Like slowing down the mind, going to a place that's peaceful, and being able to tap into that space where there's not a lot of cloudy confusion, thoughts, stresses, whatever the world's throwing at you. That's where you can discover a lot in just the quietness. Yeah. It's interesting that
so that's one thing. The other thing, I think, I don't know whether you'll agree with this, is like you're trying to get to that calm part, but I think that's why loads of people give up on meditation, because they think to do meditation right, you have to not think. And that's so far from the truth. To do meditation, you're trying to get to that place, but every time, and you're inevitably going to repeatedly think things. But it's every time you notice yourself think, you try bring yourself back to that calm. And it's that muscle is so important, because that's the one where you start to notice that you're thinking those things,
Yep. That's it. It's not in the, you're right. I should rephrase. It's not in the silence, really. It's in that struggle between where awareness happens. Man, I like these gems, bro. These are gonna get clipped for Instagram.
I love
it. I have those moments, you probably do too, on the podcast where you're like, boom, zinger.
Yeah. I still need to. I haven't done the good job like you have of clipping mine, so I need to.
Oh, my YouTube is horrible. I have like 50 subscribers, but I just post the videos and I'll get to it when I get time. But I'm like, at least I can post-produce the little clips for the social. And then hopefully at some point someone will help me build the YouTube, but I'm not, I mean, you can't do 17 things at once.
All in good time.
Yeah. How do you ever struggle with that? Like being somebody that like has tried a lot of things, is super interested in a lot of things. Like, do you ever struggle with like, man, now I'm trying to do 23 things?
Big time. Definitely.
I had a feeling.
And like, I think it's also, I struggle. I've had so many projects I've started and not stuck with, because I think that's it too. It's like the initial shine and the initial feeling of some new project is so fun, and then it inevitably punches you in the face repeatedly and it gets very difficult. And so it's easy to give up and go back to the sort of, limitless possibilities of a new idea. But I think the Kung Fu thing taught me that early in life, that like you stick with something and have patience. Kung Fu literally means time and effort. So
Really?
and that's the unlock to Kung Fu, to building muscles, to whatever skill it is in life, is like time and effort. And so I'm very much
That's
trying.
cool.
The 10 years it took me to get the black belt is how I'm viewing the art thing, and the podcast thing is like, cool, well, like whatever, I'm just a white belt now, and it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, but I'm just committing to that 10 years, and that's helping me not get as distracted by those other shiny potential objects, because it's like, no, just committing to the process, whatever, there's no way it's going to be in a bad place when it's 10 years in, and I'm just going to stick to it till then and see. And at 10 years time, if it's like, oh yeah, it's like whatever, this is just always just going to be a hobby, then I can recognize that and adjust or whatever, but I'm like committed.
Man, there's so much power in the things that you just said: time and effort and commitment. Those 3 words I heard there, I was like,
yeah,
boom, that is an incredible formula to simplify things for people that want to build stuff or chase a dream or whatever. You gotta realize it's gonna take time and effort, and you have to be willing to commit to it, not halfway. Nah, I'll do it for 6 months, and if it doesn't work, well, you already shot yourself in the foot.
yeah,
You already undercut yourself. That probably won't work. Like, you gotta give yourself like a good
like
amount of time.
a long time.
Bro, you and me are tracking. I'm in the same place. I'm like, with everything I'm doing, as impatient as I am, it's counterintuitive to me because I'm a Westerner with everything at my fingertips.
Yeah.
Give it to me now. But I have learned a lot of about patience in my life, and like, I still suck at it, but I still am willing to be committed to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. You're so right though. Like having everything at your fingertips is a huge impediment to our generation, I think, because it makes stuff like that. So what so many people struggle with, like, oh well, I've been running this Instagram page for a week and I only have 10 followers. Like, fucking obviously, of course, it takes so long, and it's like, it takes so long, but that can make it seem impossible because what you can achieve in a year is so far from what the big goal might be, that like it just, you forget about the power of how it compounds over time, I think. And it's like and then when, like you say, when you can have everything, like all of the world's pleasures at your fingertip, I can order food and it's here in 30 minutes, or I can do whatever, look at anything, I'll like get these videos, get this information. And that's so counterintuitive to what it takes to do the long-term things, that it's like, yeah, I think it's challenging.
I agree with you. Do you have, like, for you personally, because you mentioned beforehand that you were talking about taking a screen break or a social media break, or like, how do you think, because we have to live in this world of technology and ease, and how do you balance the two of not focusing so much on instant gratification, but also realizing that, like, yeah, we do live in a fast-paced world where you can have things fast. Like, how do you create that separation in your brain?
That's a very good question. If I could answer it, I think I
Tough
probably
one.
might be further along in life than I am, because it's like I mean, just as much, I succumb to the lure of the instant gratification of many things very often. But I guess again, it's just like, it's just be aware of it if it's a thing that you struggle with, and like try and chip away with it, or like do stuff like, yeah, like when I've got a week off work and I'm considering just a day where I have no screens, like do things like that like, or what I was talking to you about, I have my Instagram app at the back, like 4 screens into my phone and in a folder, so that it takes a number of clicks for me to get to it, because that I say as my phone's just in hand's reach, just in case I need it.
Me too. Just in case I need to check.
Yeah, like have little, like build in little things that are small barriers. That's something that I found helps me a bit. But I mean, it's
that's smart. I think it's you. I'm terrible at it too, man. I'm so distracted. I think I check my Coinbase, I think like 17 times a day. I mean, nothing really changed that much, a little up and down, but it's just that instant being able to get those hits. Yeah. But I think you're right. Like, it's funny because that just goes back to the idea of trying things, right? Like, just try to put your Instagram far away. Try to take a day. Right?
Yeah.
Everything takes the first step.
Truth.
Yeah. I forgot I had questions written down.
We're in the zone, man. We're in the zone.
This is why I don't really do the question thing, because I'm like, for what? Like, that seems too structured. It's way too structured. Well, I guess I'll just keep going then with this of like, are there things in your life through the past maybe 12 months, routines or habits, not art, but like, actual like more routines and habits versus pleasures and hobbies? Are there routines and habits that you changed or became aware of, or that like all that time by yourself or alone, you were like, oh man, I need to move my Instagram away, or man, that was a really bad habit, I need to fix that, or I need to read more? Were there things that, besides art, obviously art was like, oh yeah, boom, but were there other little things that are less like fun that you like changed about your life because of this once in a lifetime pandemic?
I don't think necessarily anything as a result of the pandemic. Nothing's like springing to mind. I live beside a McDonald's, and I was eating McDonald's a lot, so I've stopped going to McDonald's. And I stopped eating chocolate because they were the two unhealthy things I was doing. But I've just started doing other unhealthy things in their place. So I don't think I've quite got to the root cause of those issues yet. But apart from that, no. The best habit I've gotten into in lockdown has been how I've managed to keep myself consistent with output for the podcast, I think. Which has been like, it's resulted in some episodes that aren't very strong. There's definitely a wide range in the quality of the content of my podcast, but I think that's fine. I think just building that muscle of like practicing that habit is like, because the ones that aren't good are equally valuable, because I can sort of afterwards think, oh, okay, maybe if I have one sentence written down on a piece of paper and I just sit down, that's not enough to sustain more than about 10 minutes of talking. So sometimes, things like it, even the ones that are a bit bad teach you something that you can, if you're aware. And like, I'm not sitting down having like a 20-minute like post-mortem of each podcast and saying, what did I do wrong, what did I do right? It's that gut feel instinct. It's like, afterwards I'll just have it in the back of my mind, oh, that wasn't probably as strong an episode as some of the other ones. Oh, I didn't plan. Okay, maybe next time I'll take the 10 minutes to think things through a bit beforehand, sort of thing.
Is it, as someone who listens to your podcast, the Creative Marketing Podcast, shameless plug, go listen to it. It's, if nothing else, you'll be entertained and enjoy it. And if the greatest thing is you'll learn some things. But the one you did about how to make a YouTube video, bro. but that's great, because like, you're not letting anything stop you, or there's no friction. It's just idea, do, execute. Right? Idea, do, art, do, podcast, do. First podcast didn't like, cool, do number 2, do number 3. Oh, number 3 was great. What do I learn? Do number 4. Like, I like that about you. I've already caught on to that. It's like, you're not afraid to try stuff. And I think that's super, I shouldn't say rare, but it's something I think a lot of people struggle with, because there's fears and insecurities and the voices of the world and comparison and things that hold you back. How do you build this muscle of just like, execute? I'll try Kung Fu, zoology, and start a podcast. And then I'll paint pictures like Basquiat. That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've overcome those fears and stuff a bunch. Yes, I've been very consistent with the podcast. I've like managed to do a lot of stuff, but I would say equally, I'm very acutely aware of how much I'm still held back by those things. So like, I have to a point overcome it, but like very much still am struggling with lots of those demons myself. YouTube being a fucking prime example. For some reason, I just can't bring myself to start making YouTube videos. Really need to get over that soon. I will. So yeah, I think it's like, I guess like each new time, it's kind of, you have to overcome it anew to an extent, I think. And like, as you build those habits, as you can turn something into a habit, then it, like the podcast, I'm not really sitting there being like, oh, what are people going to think about the podcast? I've just sort of, cause I've made it a habit. But I think the initial ones, you just need to like power through. Like you need to, what am I trying to say? Like, it's like, yeah, you just need to, I don't know. It's just like,
you got to do it.
Decide. Yeah, just do it. Exactly. You need to like get over those thoughts in your head, realize how stupid they are. And every time I do something like that, like I remember like a year ago, because around the year ago when I started doing the art and stuff, I did an Instagram live and I was shitting myself. I need to get back to doing Instagram lives. I was so scared, but like I just did it. And then at the end, I was like, oh, that was completely fine. Like nothing bad happened. It's like so much. And like, I think even a lot of the mainstream narrative around building an audience or putting yourself out there like that, a lot of it sort of is based around there's going to be haters, whatever, don't listen to them. But in my experience, there's not even really that many haters. There's just mostly almost entirely people who are saying, oh, good job, or people who are indifferent. I think if you're getting to the point where you're getting haters, like shut the fuck up complaining because you're killing it.
You've done
you're
something.
Like, yeah. You've reached enough people to have some people hate you. You're in a great spot. Like in my experience, like that's even all just in your head rather than anything anyone actually does. It's like you thinking, well, what if someone like I knew 20 years ago sees something and thinks something ill of it? It's like those are the levels of things that happen. It's all in your head, I think, so much.
Yeah. Bro, that's so true. Like, I have very few haters because I don't have the scale of my platforms to have a lot of haters. Like, it's very logical. You don't need to be worried about the haters normally if you have zero influence,
like
right?
You're only followed by your friends on Instagram and you're worried about haters. Like, get better friends.
I was saying, you have a friend problem. Bro, that's you man. That's so true. Like, man, I wanted to say like 5 things there, but I'll hold back. You know how that goes? Sometimes you're like, which thing should I say?
Yeah.
You're so right, man. And that just takes me back in my mind to like what I was saying about like when you have these thoughts, like you said, like what if? Like I've learned this from like being a failure in many things in life and like also struggling with alcohol and, you know, having to get sober and not having to, but choosing to get sober and like overcome some demons. And like, I've learned through that process some really good like life habits and tactics. And one of them that I learned in rehab was, this was a counselor. I can't remember who told me. One of the counselors was talking about when you have these doubts and fears and insecurities, like play it all the way out. Like, what if my friend from high school hates my Instagram live? Don't just stop there and just sit in fear or insecurity. Like, he's like, what if? So let's play the game, he said. And then we play it. He's like, so what if? What would happen? You know, and you play it out and you're like, well, I guess, you know, maybe I'll feel silly that Zach was mad at me for 3 minutes and then I'll live my life, you know? Yeah. And then, and so like recently I've been on this tip of like emotion and logic, right? They're both valid, but there's a place for logic to interfere with emotion, or maybe not interfere, but come alongside and maybe diminish some not so logical emotions, right? Like fear. If you can insert logic into a lot of your fears and insecurities, in my experience and my opinion, just mine, you know, if you're able to bring logic alongside some of those things, like, man, I'm so scared of doing this thing or starting this dream that I have. Then you got to start asking yourself, you got to play it all the way out. Like, why am I so scared? What would it look like if it really did fail, right? Like, and then you start thinking a little more logically, right? When you start playing out and going to the end of those fears and insecurities. Because I think we sometimes get scared or insecure and we just stop there and we're like, I'm scared. Okay, why are you scared? What would happen if the thing you're afraid of really does happen, right? And then most of the time you're like, oh, it's not as bad as I felt, right? The feeling there kind of holds us back. But sometimes our feelings are they're just feelings. Not to diminish feelings. Feelings are super valid, right? But it's like, what do you do with that feeling? Do you just sit in it and go, I'm scared? Or like, do you process it and come to a more logical place in that feeling and go, I do feel this, but I've now processed it and I'm going to set that feeling to the side, right? Like, but it's like, it's so hard.
There's definitely a clip back there, I think, in the last the last minute of what you said.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I was just ranting. But you and I have
it
done
spoke
it.
to me.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's again, everything we're saying is so like it's coming together so well. It's the muscle, right? It's the muscle, that idea.
I'm trying to think of what's like a practical thing to say to someone who's like, that's all well and good, but like it's
right.
You're not really struggling because you've put out loads of podcasts or whatever, and somebody who hasn't done anything, like how to get that first thing. I think it's like it's so hard. It is. It's just like rip off the band-aid. Just do whatever. Do something that's like taking a step forward. Whatever if you're too scared to like do an Instagram live, then post a picture on Instagram. And if you're too scared to do that, then like figure out something else. Figure out whatever the lowest bar is that you can set yourself and do that. Because I think the other thing is momentum. Is like if you do one even small thing and then you think, oh, you get some sort of good feeling out of doing it. You're like, oh, I did something. And then if you build on that, you do something a little bit more and you're like, oh yeah, this like, oh yeah, nobody like, I didn't die and like, whatever, you know, it's like building that momentum and setting like the lowest bar you can, I think can be a good way to get the first steps in.
That's a great tactic. I'm stealing that. I'm sharing that with people. I'm stealing that.
Booyah.
That's good. Definitely. Like grab the low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Man. Get some easy hits of dopamine and feel like that can build the.
That's good.
I think that's a Tim Ferriss one probably. Or
that's a clip. That's a clip right there. We will clip that. You've heard it here first. If you're listening, we will clip that. That's so good, man. Like I'm glad you said that. Honestly, this is it. And just to go a little left or right. It's so great for me, these podcasts, and I don't know how your experience has been. I learn almost every time I talk to somebody. All the time. So selfishly, I'm going to do this podcast forever so I can learn a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, even if this podcast doesn't go anywhere and doesn't like grow to be huge or anything, it's like, still, I'm getting all this like advice and learning all these things. Yeah, it's so true.
And connecting with people and like, you know, there's just so much that comes from it. I'm so happy that we have these podcasts. But I want to go back real quick to what you were saying about like, how do you tell that to somebody in the moment? Like it's easy for you because you have 37 podcasts or 50,000 podcasts. I have 0. There's, I do think in my experience, at least, like sometimes you just need somebody like an Aengus to be like, hey man, you can do it. Like I still sit in my insecurities and stuff, but I just do it. It's there's just that vote of confidence. We live in such a individualized world where it's like, just do your own thing. Like, what about other people and bringing people in?
Yeah, man, that's also that I think builds so much on what we were saying about there not being actually that many haters. The thing is that once you actually start to go public with these things and you start telling people or like sharing your ambitions or being like, oh, I want to try do this thing or whatever it is, while you might be sitting there before you do it thinking, oh God, what if I get judged? What if like whatever, all those feelings of insecurity. And then the thing is that once you actually do, that's often when you'll get people being like, oh, hey, this is super cool. Like so many random people I haven't spoken to in a long time. When I've started posting the art, have reached out to me and said, oh, hey, really think this is cool. You know, words of support. And so weirdly, by getting over the initial fear, that may also then unlock some more of that positive momentum, you know?
Dropping bombs, bro. That's a gem. That's so true. That's so good, man. This is gonna be the greatest. I'm so pumped. That's so good though. That's so true. Like there are less haters than you think, and there are way more supporters than you probably realize.
Yeah.
But you can't really figure out either until you do the thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna have, like you said, you're not gonna have any haters till you do it, but you also won't have any supporters till you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to do it. And Nike had it right, man. Just do it. That was so profound, and we didn't even realize it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure subconsciously on some level we did. That's part of what helped. But yeah, it's like too true. It's the words to live by.
I don't want. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes I'm like, man, I just talked for 2 hours, so I can keep myself in check. I want to ask a few selfish questions. One, you work for Vayner Media, and you know people may not know, but for those of you listening and me, who's hyper aware of Gary and what he's built and what you're a part of, how has that influenced and shaped kind of like the trajectory of your life being part of something like that? I'm not on the inside, so you know better than me, but like the honey empire and like those type of ideas, leading with love and just empathy and humility and these things that we don't normally think of in a corporate structure. I know it's not incorporated, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been a positive experience, and what are your thoughts on like that type of organization and culture?
Yeah, it's definitely been a massively positive experience, I think.
Good.
There's probably two parts to it. I'd say one part is that's part of what drew me there. So there's like elements of like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because that's how I think anyway. And it like I think you're very similar. You like found Gary and like listen to what he said and like it just resonates because it's like, yeah, this dude seems right. And like being nice is a good thing to do, all those sorts of things. So I think it's partially that attracted me to it rather than it being things I learned there. But equally, I mean, it's been like, yeah, it's been epic to see from the inside. I think like I moved to London with basically not knowing anyone in London apart from my brother. And like some of my best friends for the rest of my life are now people who I met through Vayner Media. And I think it just as a place attracts a lot of those people who are sort of positive, nice people. So yeah, it's I mean it's a huge part of my life, and I'm frozen on my screen in a real weird way.
Oh, you froze.
Not sure if I am for you.
I mean, you look great. You're just not moving a lot.
I'm not sure I agree.
Are you trying to get me to like look at your sweatshirt more? Or? Look at my sweatshirt. I won't move. Oh, I think you're coming back. That's I again, like not being in the organization, but watching from afar and watching people like you and Claude and Gary and just these people I really respect. It makes me feel good. Because I used to work in the corporate world, and I don't have any hate for the corporate world. But you know, I have my feelings on how the corporations I worked for, very large, multi-billion-dollar restaurant corporations, and just the cultures and the way I saw things once I started to move up, you know, a little bit, is just I couldn't do it. I don't agree with anything other than leading with love and empathy and putting people first. I just don't believe in profits over people.
Yeah.
So like, I just say that to I guess to give ups to you and the Vayner organization. Like it really, it seriously like almost makes me emotional that like there is somebody like Gary, and then there are people like you guys now, a whole organization that believes in people over profits. Like I think for the most part, right? Sure, there's people in the organization that care about money too much or whatever, but it's so rare, man. And something as large as what you're a part of to still be able to hold on to those values in this world, man, it blows my mind. Like it makes me almost emotional. That's incredible. Like it's so amazing, man. And the fact that you guys will go on and be able to, you know, whatever you do, you guys will go on and like, and kind of, you'll always be able to be like, yeah, that was true. It wasn't a fake, right? Because there's people that are like, Gary's fake, Vayner ain't like that. You know, but you being in there.
Yeah, and it's like I think you see from the inside even more so how like when it comes to Gary, he's just so what he says is true. Like I just trust him and trust his like intentions and everything so much. And Claude, absolute legend. And I think I view it as like something where I have partial responsibility because I think it is so much only as much as every person who's there makes it. So I'm very conscious of trying to be a force that helps to continue to make it that sort of company and that sort of place. And it's like as a company, it's growing up and it's sort of like I think I joined at the tail end of one period into the next period, and it's sort of maturing as a business and, you know, processes and ways of working, getting formulated, all that sort of stuff. And I think there could have been a danger that it lost some of that, but it's been great to see it become more corporate in terms of having processes and ways of working in the shape of the business, but still keeping all of that, you know, honey empire sort of positive side to it as well, I think.
that culture, that honey empire. I love that term. It's so cool. He's a wild guy, man. Anyways, I have a few more selfish questions, so forgive me. But while I have you, I'm like, I gotta tap into this guy. As somebody who, I'm starting a business or started, or wherever we are, and I have like 17 other ideas and another one I'm working on that's not launched. But I've realized in this process, which sounds like super simple, but I've realized because I came from the corporate world, I was very good at, like you said, processes and culture and people development and all these types of great things, and growing revenue and all these things. But I never had to, because I worked for a big corporation, I never had to market. I never did. I worked for one of the companies, Chipotle. Is not a secret. Chipotle was, I think at the time, was valued about $3 billion.
I am obsessed with Chipotle, man. By the
so
way.
Good.
Oh,
and it really is. Like, I really appreciated the company and the opportunity, and I tell people still to this day, that's some of the best food you could get at that price point.
Oh,
it
absolutely
is
unreal.
They make the guac from scratch. They chop their own onions and jalapenos. Like, everything is diced by hand. Like, this is real food. Anyways, so I love Chipotle, but my point, I never had to be a marketer. And so now I'm realizing, and sometimes I'm like, God, I'm so far behind. I got to learn. And I'm like, I don't know anything. What would be your tip to me and somebody that's like, okay, now I know all about business, except I don't know anything about marketing other than what I've heard Gary say for 3 years. What would you say to a young marketer? And I have other friends too that are like, want to learn how to market digitally, right? They're like, oh, I got to learn how to do this so I can start my hat brand or whatever. But they don't know where to go or what to do other than, well, just watch YouTube, I guess. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Do you have any, what would you tell us young marketers who are just getting into the game? Like, any tips, tricks, advice?
I think I'm freezing again. Can you hear me all right?
Oh yeah, I hear you great. You sound wonderful. You sound the same.
Oh,
there you are.
Hear it. Well, it seems to be working, so I'll keep going.
Perfect.
A few things. Let me see where to start. I think in terms of learning marketing, all of the platforms give away unbelievably free stuff. So like Google has like training and how to run ads on all the different Google places. Facebook does. I mean, that's where I would start, to be honest, because with those two, you can reach most of the people in the world on the internet. So do the free trainings. I think, honestly, though, the biggest thing is like, we talked a lot about how instant gratification, is the deal. People have these things on their phones and can access all this information, whatever. Things can happen very quickly. And I think people can think, oh, I've, like, say when it comes to running paid ads, I've like helped people run ads like for small budgets for small things, right? You're never going to like immediately, and when you think about it yourself, when you think about you and how you interact with a business, you never really like see something for the first time, click on the website, particularly like the more expensive the product, the more likely it is. But even for something cheap, you almost never see something for the first time and then instantly buy it. You very often see something, think, oh, that's kind of interesting, and then see it a week later, and then see it a week later, and then the fourth time you see it, you're like, oh yeah, actually I'm going to buy that, whatever it is. Or like, and that's probably more likely over a few months sort of period. Bearing that in mind, and thinking of the marketing funnel being like widest at the top, and that sort of, the marketing can be split into a funnel of 3 stages when we go super simplistic. Awareness driving marketing, which is the top, biggest, widest part of the funnel. Consideration, which is the middle, sort of mid-sized part, and then conversion, which is the bottom, smallest part. And the sizes represent how many people. So you need to make loads of people aware in order for a subset of those people to then consider. Then subset of those consideration people, when you hit them again with more messaging, will then convert. And so I think a lot of people do the first part. They start to build some level of awareness among a wide group of people, and then they give up because they think, well, I've done this and I haven't gotten any results. Whereas actually you've just done the first step, and you need to nurture those people and keep reaching them with messaging over and over again, keep building that story, keep building brand awareness, driving some of those people who are aware to then start considering. and then driving some of those people to convert. And people give up at the first step because you don't get instant gratification. You need to put in the work up front in order to then build things up and build a foundation that over time will start to drive results. And so that's not necessarily a good tactical piece of advice, but I think it's the most important piece of advice is, I mean, if you've got huge budgets, you can pretty quickly drive results. But like, assuming you don't, and
Nope.
assuming even if you go a step behind that, and it's like you don't even have budget to do anything, you're just doing things organically, then even more than ever, it's like obviously that's just going to take a lot of time, and you're going to have to build things up. And then I would say maybe if it's like if you're doing it that way, even look to start spending a little bit of money. Like if you make a sale, maybe you spend that money on running an ad, whatever it is. That's the biggest thing, I think, is like, don't expect miracles, don't expect things to happen overnight. Like, realize that you think of how you interact with brands and then reverse engineer that and understand that it's not going to be some sort of instant conversion. You need to very over time build those things up. And then the other thing I think is creative is such a key variable of marketing, like what messaging you're serving, what your images look like, all those things. The more different versions of ad copy or like post copy of different like color layouts of different post layouts of like, we're doing a video and we're doing a still image and we're doing a GIF, and like got one thing that's like crazy funny and one thing that's a very serious tone. The more of those different things that you can test, and it's very similar to the doing it with yourself and becoming self-aware, like becoming aware of which pieces of marketing materials or which pieces of content work well with your audience and which ones don't. And over time understanding, oh, I wonder why these things do better. A random example for me, when I look at my own Instagram and things that I'm posting, I see that things with my face in them, with not just a picture of a painting, but a picture of me with a painting, tends to do better. And like starting to unlock learnings like that you can then feed into how you're creating content moving forward. And the combination of the huge amount of time where you're starting to build that awareness and drive consideration or whatever, combined with while you're doing that over time, you're starting to gather learnings of which things work and which things don't. The combination of those two things over a very long amount of time. And so I'm very early in my own case study of this thesis, but I'm confident in it, is like, don't expect things to happen overnight. Don't expect things to happen in the first 2 years, probably. Just blindly commit to like churning out content, learning, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, and forget about any results for the first long amount of time, I think, is and that's more from my personal experience, because a lot of my marketing experiences with brands who are spending millions and millions and millions, and it's like, cool, yeah, that's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to drive people down to convert when you've got that much money to spend. But like when it comes to doing things organically or with a very small budget, I think you get what you pay for, and you either have to pay money or pay time, and you have to pay the cost before you get what you deserve. And so it's like, don't expect results overnight, commit to a long-term view, and always be learning what works and what doesn't.
That's good. Thank you for that. I was super tuned in. Very selfish. Very, very selfish.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, everyone.
Well, I mean, hopefully it's useful for one or two other people listening too, maybe.
I'm sure it will. I know a few of them right now. Like I said, hat company. I want to start a hat company. Okay, we got to learn how to sell them. Not me, somebody else, but I think it'll be super helpful. Okay, I'll wrap it up here. This has been amazing. I would really say, if I could vote on a word, amazing would be the first one that comes to my mind. So first of all, thank you for sharing your knowledge, man. That last piece, which selfishly is super helpful. I really appreciate that from just a marketing standpoint. I'm going to definitely implement that. I mean, there's just the conversation, man. Like, you are a quality person.
Right,
you just are. I appreciate that. You just are, man. Like, it's very, there's no facade. It's just a genuine person over there that just wants to, in my opinion, just wants to live a fulfilling life and be a good person. Like, I'm happy to connect with you. So I won't flatter you too much because I want your head to get too big. But I mean, I've asked this question of some guests, and sometimes it applies, but I think this would be an interesting one. Being from London, or being in London, excuse me. Tea is a big thing over there, right? But over here, coffee is a big thing, and I'm sure coffee's big everywhere. And all that buildup is to this silly little question. Do you prefer coffee or do you prefer tea?
1,000,000% coffee.
Really?
I actively dislike tea, which makes me the big time sort of black sheep of my family and probably my nation in Ireland, which is as big a tea drinking place as England. But yeah, coffee all day.
Really? What is your preference? Like, what if you're going to the coffee shop right now, what are you getting?
Like strong is my preference. So like my usual order is like a cappuccino with 2 extra shots, and they always say, it has 2 shots in it already, and I say yes. That's why I ordered one with 4 shots, please. Yeah, I want something that packs a punch.
I love that, man. That's amazing. I like to end it on like the light little questions like that because I think it's a fun way to be like bloop bloop, cool, and we're done. Well, thanks, man. I'm super grateful that we've connected. I think there'll be a lot more connection in the future, and it's just cool to watch your journey. And artbyaengus.com. When will that be available and up and running?
11th of May is what we're tracking towards.
Okay, May 11th. Art by Aengus. Go copy some really dope art, like from someone who's watching his art. Like I'm literally looking at it. Like, go grab yourself some art. If you're into NFTs, go get you some Aengus art too while you get an NFT. Okay. Well, thanks, man. It's been a pleasure. Like, you're a super dope dude, and I just appreciate you sharing your time. I really do.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it, and I equally appreciate you. You are equally a wonderful person, and I equally enjoy watching your journey and look forward to seeing it progress in the coming years. And yeah, like you said, I'm sure it won't be the last time we're on each other's podcast. I'm sure it won't be. There's lots of journey still to be written, and I'm excited for it.
I'm excited too, man. All right. artbyaengus.com, creative marketing podcast. Go listen, go check it out. My friend Aengus is an amazing individual. Aengus, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Namaste. Thank you,
Namaste.
sir.
Adios.
Chat to you. Bye-bye.